Flying Swordsman is an OSR Wuxia game, and it's complicated. Not complicated as in hard, it's an OSR game at its core, fairly simple. It's complicated because talking about it has to be prefaced with, we tore the shit out of this game to make it function, here's my thoughts on it. So what I'll do is give you the 411. The game says it's a Wuxia game, but the game is an OSR first. These two sides compete with one another the entire time, which leads to a game that doesn't quite know what it wants to be. This mostly boils down in the form of its attributes, classes, and maneuvers. Attributes operate off of a dice ladder system. Rather than a +1 or +2, you'll gain a +1d4 or a +1d6. While this seems like it makes characters feel more powerful, over time it gradually does the opposite. Each of these dice introduces a new range of the roll. So if you're heavily invested in acrobatics, for example, with your awesome d10, you might still constantly roll a 1 on it, leading to the d20 still being king. These attributes increase very slowly as well, with 1 increasing a single dice size per level, but which ones are available are determined by the character's class. This leads to a grand total of 9 increases to your attributes, with a level 10 increasing all of your character's stats by 1 step. One of the larger issues, as with any OSR player can probably see, is that certain attributes are more valuable than others, encouraging them to be chosen, especially when you get things such as acrobatics, which allows you to roll range attacks, which are absolutely best in this game, bar none. This leads to classes. There are 4 classes in the game: Fighter, Wizard, Shaman, and Thief. Each of these have a small number of profiles to pick from to change their nature. The catch is that you have to choose your maneuvers in a particular way, as well as having the issue of all positives and negatives of that subclass, which amusingly could completely cripple a character, but I digress. Now, I'm going to break down each class in particular because they all deserve something a little bit different. Fighters are complete fucking gorillas, with large health pools, many maneuvers, an absolute boatload of attacks, and impressive saves. Fighters suffer from one key issue: that there being their main purpose quickly boils down to punch thing hard. The role in the party is always going to end up being their raw offensive power, as armor is useless and increasing your AC is done through the use of the maneuver system in a far more dedicated way. The martial artist profile being able to jack their AC potentially up to 30 plus with the right conditions near endgame, making them nearly unkillable by the book, let alone hittable, but they end up being rather dull to play, as all the tools in the world mean nothing. One punch thing harder is going to be always the best option. Wizards have access to a wide variety of spells that allow them to bend reality to their whims, as long as they have their slots, because this is still fancy in Magic. However, instead of increased level to increased skill, it quickly becomes apparent that it was increased level to constrict the number of viable options. With a plethora of non-combat spells, the remaining offense spells relied heavily on saves, which were easy to bypass or were very short range, which combined with the OSR wizard making them get even close, a death sentence to the gorillas. By the later levels, the wizard was able to use spells which either were save or suck, or just save or half damage. Any other spell will either be resisted quite easily or can't be used in the game about combat in combat very well. Shamans were probably done the most dirty by the entire affair. Their gimmick is a replacement for the cleric class. However, their spells don't scale at all, and the sprinkling of spells they do receive tend to do minimum damage or minimum effect. Most of them are do save or do a mediocre effect, non-combat RP spells or battle effects which require far more setup than execution. Even the few combat spells they do receive are small in comparison to either the wizard spell or the fighter punching things just harder. Even their healing is more of a band-aid than a strict heal, which feels a lot more different to the mud and blood OSR dungeon crawler than a game literally called Flying Swordsman. Thieves are my poster child for what the game is confused game issues, as the thieves are your traditional thieves, useful for their number of skills, but their value diminishes in combat outside of backstabbing. Most of the thief skills don't really feel impactful for any moment outside of very niche situations or dungeon delving, which the game doesn't say that it is. The thief profiles also range from cripple yourself outside of cities, cripple yourself inside cities, or be a worse fighter. This feels like the place to put a Lamentations of the Flame Princess specialist cast. God, am I seriously praising Lamentations? Fuck. To fill the gaps in, but the problem is it just doesn't. I mentioned it throughout, but the maneuvers play are probably the largest problem child in the game in general, and the effect maneuvers have on the grander scheme of things. A maneuver is, at its core, an ability a character can perform on their turn or as a passive effect. Most of them are fucking terrible, or mandatory. For example, a level 1 maneuvers, you can get these incredibly early on, you're always going to start with one. You have changing seasons, which gives you a proficiency in a single weapon type, which you may already have, have, or you can take Monkey's Dance, which allows you to avoid attacks of opportunity if you perform an acrobatic stunt, which you're always going to be fucking performing. Or Fist of Steel, which increases your martial arts to 1d6 damage, which upgrades to Fist of Jade at level 2 maneuver, which does 1d8. But wait, it's not an upgrade, as you can just take Fist of Jade without taking the original. You could then take Dragon and Tiger, which gives you a literal extra attack, something incredibly valuable in a very strict action economy, normally only favoring fighters who gain multiple attacks. Or you can select Falling Tree, which gives you a -2 to hit to knock someone down, which can be entirely mitigated with another level 1 maneuver. This isn't even factoring that some maneuvers are just mandatory, like the AC stances. They do stack, which by level 8 for fighters can increase their maximum AC to 21, or the dreaded penalty to attack ones, such as shooting Star Strike, which is a -4 to hit to immobilize. But it's not doing that. It's a -4 to hit to have them save against immobilizing for a single round. Or you can take Cloud Somersault, which is fucking flight at a minimum of 100 feet with 0 consequences outside, ooh no, you might be a little bit too high up. Now this leads to the issue where all the enemies who don't have these maneuvers feeling incredibly weak. So you have to make every single individual enemy, and you have to make them all. Anyone important must be handmade. And this isn't simply ported over from an OSR of choice. Oh no. Because of all the little changes, it wants you to fight you along the way. It says customize as you see fit, but doesn't provide the tools or any actual resources. Instead it devolves into wrangling the system more than anything. Unless the GM goes out of their way to either restrict options or actively giving players pluses to mitigate the chances, the final thesis of this video comes to fruition. Flying Swordsman is a Wuxia game and an OSR game, but it doesn't do either particularly well. It leans too heavily on the Wuxia for what it says it wants to do with its classes and maneuvers, but then the old school realities kick in, and suddenly it's managing spell slot and not really doing the dungeon. Feels like it's being pulled in two different directions, failing to strike a balance it desperately wants to. My name is Notepad Anon. This was Flying Swordsman. The game is free, and you go to the website, it's linked below. If you do like what I do here, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I may write 100 Lotus Blades for our homebrew nightmare creature that we ended up creating, though.